Ulfet and I were really very lucky to have had the occasion to know and to have some time with Mr. Enoch Olinga. Our connection or our relation with him started before he was appointed hand of the cause. We had heard of him in the Baha'i news that came from what we call African news at the time, that Mr. Benani, hand of the cause of Africa, issued every now and then. The first time we met Mr. Olinga was when he came as a delegate to the convention of the Regional Spiritual Assembly for Northwest Africa, and that was in 1956. That regional assembly was one of 4 that were established in 56, the first 3 of them being the first in the 10-year plan. Enoch Olinga was a member of that spiritual assembly. Later, in that same year, in 56, we had an assembly meeting in the autumn. Mr. Olinga was in Tunis, of course, for the meeting. He had asked to visit the Holy Land, to go on pilgrimage and meet with the guardian. The guardian told him that he is to come in February of 57. His being in the Cameroons, and now he's in Tunis. If he were to go back to the Cameroon and then from the Cameroon, after a few months, go to the Holy Land, that would be very tiring and very costly. So he decided to remain in Tunis, and actually we had him in our house all the time until he would go to Haifa and come back and then return to his pioneering post in the Cameroon. So we had a great advantage and pleasure, of course, to have him at our home for such a period of time. Wonderful things happened. We got to know Mr. Olinga as someone, a member of the house, a member of the family. I will just tell you one incident at least that happened, one joke, I would say. Mr. Olinga, being in Tunis and having nothing to do and having to wait until he's able to go and see the beloved guardian, decided to learn Arabic. So there was the first Baha'i in Tunisia, Mr. Khamiri, and my sister, Layla Mustafa, would sit with him and teach him Arabic. Of course, that was not an easy thing for him to learn, because in Arabic there are certain syllables that are difficult, letters that are difficult for them. For instance, the letter Ha, the letter Ain, the letter Ta. These letters are very difficult for the non-Arabic speaking people to learn. In any case, by the time he was to go and visit the beloved guardian, he had made a little bit of progress. When he came back from the visit of the guardian, he told us the following story. I will read it to you as it was given beloved guardian was walking in the gardens and Olinga was walking behind him. So the guardian turned around to Olinga and asked him, "How many languages do you speak?" Olinga said, "I answered that I spoke Swahili, I spoke Teso, I spoke English, etc." And Olinga continues to say, "And I thought, but did not say, and I am learning Arabic." The guardian stopped, turned round, and said, "But Persian is easier." So that was the end of the efforts of Olinga to learn Arabic. For us, in the beginning, it was very difficult to realize who Enoch Olinga was, is, or will be. We had no idea. But we simply loved him. In 57, August 57, Ulfet and I, or rather, I and Ulfet had our first child, a boy. And we were thinking, what name shall we give him? Now you must realize, friends, that we are living in an Arabic country. They don't accept very easily non-Arabic names. Anyway, we went ahead and we said, we shall give him the name of Olinga. And we registered him as Olinga. At that time, Mr. Olinga was not hand of the cause. In October of that same year, in other words, August, September, October, 2 months later, as a matter of fact, on the 17th of October, the beloved guardian sent out, I think it was his last message to the Baha'i world. And in it, the beloved guardian appointed the last 8 hands of the cause. 3 of them were for Africa. One of these 3 was Enoch Olinga. So you could imagine how happy we were. From then on, we felt that we owed Mr. Olinga, we owed him something. But we did not know how we can prove our love and our attachment to him. In any case, the Regional Spiritual Assembly, first of all, Mr. Enoch Olinga, as a hand of the cause, slowly left the Regional Assembly, and the Regional Assembly itself was divided into national assemblies, or smaller regional assemblies and then national assemblies. And finally, we landed in Tunis with our own National Spiritual Assembly, in Tunis only. So we lost direct contact with Mr. Olinga until '63, when we were with him again in the first Baha'i Congress, the Baha'i Jubilee of 1963. And there again, Mr. Olinga really was a star in that Congress. He was the only hand of the cause from African hand of the cause.
En 1963, alors que nous sommes allés à la conférence à Londres, on a rencontré là-bas M. Olinga. Il avait appris que nous avions un fils et que nous l'avions nommé Olinga. Et alors, lorsqu'il me voit, il ouvre les bras en me disant « Mamie !» Alors, j'ai senti qu'il était content que notre fils s'appelait Olinga. Et alors, depuis ce moment-là, dans les lettres, il envoyait « Send my love to Rowshan and my kisses to Mammy and to myself. » And myself, c'était pour notre fils Olinga. Et c'était le grand souvenir de Olinga qu'il nous a laissé. Quand on pense à lui, on ne l'oublie jamais.
There's a mystery. There are mysteries in the faith. In one of the letters of the Universal House of Justice, the Universal House of Justice says that there are mysteries in the faith. But they are not mysteries that would lead to any doubt. As a matter of fact, they are mysteries that lead to confirmation. One incident that Enoch Olinga told me, or I was not alone at that time, we were speaking about various experiences, and he told us this story. When he was young, very young child, he ventured alone into the jungle, which was not very far from his village. And as he went in, it seemed to him that a hand of a gorilla, of a big gorilla, came out of the foliage in front of him like this. And he was frightened. So he stopped from his walking foot and ran back and told his father, I don't know what, his uncle, I don't remember exactly what he said, but the family, he said, there's a gorilla and it was going to attack me. So the villagers went out to see this gorilla, and they went along the path that he took. But there was no gorilla. But as they advanced a little further, they found a boar, a big boar, which could have devoured him. Mystery. I think so. You see, in 1951, as the plan, which is known as the Africa Campaign, was going along, the Africa Campaign is a plan that the beloved guardian entrusted to the National Spiritual Assembly of the British Isles in 1950. And it was supposed to go along for 2 years. I had an idea that it was more than 2 years, but Rowshan says between 50 and 52. So that must be right, correct. In a letter from the beloved guardian to the British National Assembly, dated 25th February 1951, the beloved guardian says the following: on the success of this enterprise, the Africa Campaign, unprecedented in its character and immense in its spiritual potentialities, must depend the initiation at a later period in the formative age of the faith of undertakings embracing within their range all national assemblies functioning throughout the world, the Baha'i world, undertakings in constituting in themselves a prelude to the launching of worldwide enterprises destined to be embarked upon in future epochs of that same age by the Universal House of Justice that will symbolize the unity and coordinate and unify the activities of these national assemblies. Africa campaign, unprecedented. Upon its success must depend the initiation of undertakings of national assemblies. That is a 10-year plan. These undertakings of the 10-year plan by the national assemblies, which are functioning throughout the world, constitute in themselves a prelude to the launching of worldwide enterprises that will be embarked upon by the Universal House of Justice. 10-year plan, plans of the Universal House of Justice, depending on the success of the Africa campaign. So the Africa campaign had to be a success. And I think that Enoch Olinga had a real part in its success. For a certain period, for a few years, the most exciting and inspiring news came from Africa. And some of the most inspiring news of Africa came from the Cameroon. Here is an excerpt from a circular from the hand of the cause of Africa for Africa, Mr. Musa Benani, dated March 28, 1957. We read, "Exciting news has reached us. We are rejoicing at the tidings of that the African believer, himself a knight of Baha'u'llah, has recently made the pilgrimage to the Holy Land and visited our beloved guardian. He is Enoch Olinga, Uganda pioneer to British Cameroons. The guardian was so pleased with Olinga's services that he gave him the title of Abul Futuh, which means in English, Father of Victories. The beloved further cabled me as follows." Cabled Mr. Benani. "Status, faith, British Cameroon. Consequence, Olinga's outstanding services. Merits, establishment, Hazira, Victoria, in Victoria." Then the news from Mr. Benani continue. "Recent word from Olinga gives us the glad tidings that the Hazirat al-Quds has been purchased. In other words, within 45 days from leaving the presence of the beloved guardian, Enoch Olinga was guided to achieve one of his beloved's most persistent desires and bring joy to his heart."
Lorsque M. Olinga est parti pour le pèlerinage, on lui a demandé surtout de nous avertir pour qu'on aille le chercher à l'aéroport. Et un jour, un ami va voir Rowshan au bureau et il lui dit rendez-vous au Café de Paris. Le Café de Paris se trouvait exactement sur l'avenue Bourguiba. Et cet ami s'est assis là, c'était d'ailleurs si Mouhidine Moral, et il voit passer M. Enoch Olinga. D'abord, il n'a pas cru. Est-ce que c'est lui? Alors, il s'est levé du café et il est allé courir. Il a traversé l'avenue et il est allé sur l'avenue justement pour aller voir est-ce que cette personne était vraiment M. Enoch Olinga. On ne l'attendait pas. On ne savait pas qu'il allait arriver. Et M. Enoch Olinga était en train de marcher sans penser, sans regarder à droite, sans regarder à gauche. Et il marchait, il continuait. Et en effet, c'était lui. Après, on lui a demandé, mais pourquoi vous n'avez pas averti? Il ne nous a pas répondu. Il paraissait à son retour de Haïfa, après avoir vu le bien-aimé gardien. On dirait qu'il vivait dans un autre monde, il était ailleurs. Il ne parlait plus. Il était absent. On dirait qu'il vivait dans ce souvenir avec le bien-aimé gardien qu'il avait eu. Et puis à son retour, il a demandé à Rowshan, quel est le sens de Abdel Futuh? Parce que le gardien lui a dit, tu es Abdel Futuh. Mais il n'avait pas compris le sens. Alors à son retour, il a demandé à Rowshan, que veut dire Abdel Futuh? Et Rowshan lui a dit, Futuh, c'est les conquêtes. Mais après, on avait reçu les lettres du bien-aimé gardien disant que M. Enoch Olinga se nommait Abdel Futuh, le père des victoires. C'était merveilleux et il le méritait bien.
I had the occasion to meet with Hand of the Cause John Robards. And one day he told me that story about Enoch Olinga. John Robards was also one of the admirers of Olinga. When he spoke about Olinga, I felt very much that it came out of his heart. The first time Mr. Olinga went to Chicago, he decided to go and visit the temple. So he took a taxi, and it was rather towards late in the evening. And he asked the taxi man to go to Wilmette, to the Baha'i temple. And as they went along, the taxi man felt very sorry for this gentleman whom he understood is not American, he comes from far away. And he told him, look sir, it will be late. You won't be able to see the temple. It will be late, dark. And Enoch Olinga told him, it's okay, you keep going. No, don't worry. Again, the taxi man felt so sorry for him that he will go all this distance and see nothing. So he decided to tell him again, you really try to choose another time. And Mr. Olinga kept telling him, I still want to go. So they arrived to the temple site, and it was dark. Olinga asked the taxi man to stop. He went down and went towards the temple, and as he came to the steps, he knelt down and put his forehead to this floor. At that moment, the lights of the temple came up. The main gate door to the temple was opened, and the attendant of the temple came out and asked the gentleman who was kneeling to come in and visit the temple. So Mr. Olinga went in, and then the gentleman asked him, please sir, who are you? And Mr. Olinga said, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter. And as he was showing Allah, he kept asking him again and again, please tell me, who are you? Then Mr. Olinga said, if I tell you, would you keep it? You keep quiet, you don't tell anybody? He said, no, I will not tell you. He said, I'm Enoch Olinga. Enoch Olinga? Oh! The man, the attendant, ran dashing down to the building, the National Secretary's building, in next, not far away from, just across the street, as a matter of fact, from the temple. And there was Mr. Charles Walcott, and many friends who were there waiting, actually waiting to meet Enoch Olinga. And so Enoch Olinga went in and spent the evening with them. What happened was that this temple attendant that was just about leaving, closed everything, put the lights out, and was leaving the temple. And then he saw this taxi stop, and this gentleman walking down up to the step. So he said that this must be someone special who's coming from far. I'll wait and see what he wants. And as he saw him kneeling there, he said he must be a Baha'i coming from far away. And that's how he opened it. These are certain incidents and many, many little things like this that keep memory of this great gentleman, this great person. In 1983, I was the Secretary of the National Assembly at the time, and I received a letter from Rohia Khanum. It was intended to do something about it, make sure that the institutions are informed. She said that I am forwarding to you herewith an article on the life of Mr. Enoch Olinga, which I have written at the request of the Universal House of Justice, and which will appear in the next volume of the Baha'i World, it is actually the in memoriam article that appeared in the Baha'i World. She said it will be sometime before the volume is completed and offered for sale, and in any case, it is an expensive book for reference purposes beyond the means of most Baha'is anywhere in the world to purchase personally. In view of this, the beloved House of Justice has approved of my sending you this article immediately in order that you and the National Assembly make it available in printed or typed form as soon as possible to the believers in your country. And then she goes on to say, Mr. Olinga is the only black African hand of the cause which we will ever have. His life and his concepts of service are therefore of great significance to his fellow Africans, and cannot but inspire and educate them to follow in his footsteps in the increasing, etc. The example of this noble hand can mean something personally to them and inspire them to strengthen their backs to withstand pressures and tests in the days to come. It is because of this that the House of Justice has approved of my sending the closed article. And I know it is the ardent wish of the House of Justice, as well as my own, that this story of Olinga's life should be of service to their friends at this time. From then on, Ulfet and I felt that we had a duty. We were probably the only non-African family who had, I'm considering Africa as sub-Sahara Africa, although as an Egyptian I am African in a sense, but I don't think that was the sense. I don't think the beloved Guardian included the North Africans or the Egyptians when he spoke about the Africans. As a matter of fact, I'm sure he did not. So continentally we are Africans, but spiritually we are not Africans. For some reason which I cannot, again, I suppose it's a mystery, from the moment I received that letter from Rowshan, things started to become very difficult. Not only for me, for our National Assembly, and for the believers in Tunisia. We had, I don't know what happened, but it was very difficult. I know that it's, for a Baha'i, you cannot say any difficulty is able to stop you from doing what you should. But sometimes we have to accept that what we should do has to be delayed a little bit, and I think that is what happened. So that I was not able to do much until 1996. In other words, something like 13 years later. In any case, I decided that there are many little things that would be very interesting and exciting for the friends to learn about Enoch Olinga. And some of those things, probably we were the only people who could publish them. So Ulfet and I decided to prepare a booklet about what we call reminiscences of moments we spent with Enoch Olinga. And these reminiscences, with the memorial article of Rowshan, were printed in a book. And now we have the book in English and we have the book in French. The memorial article has been translated in Arabic. And there are translations going on for what we call the Olinga book in Spanish and Portuguese. And we hope that this will continue into other languages. Enoch Olinga, Mr. Enoch Olinga seemed to have grasped the faith very quickly. After all, he became a Baha'i in 1952, and immediately afterwards he left as a pioneer, and he was alone in the Cameroon. And yet, he seemed to have grasped the spirit of the faith in a manner which is extraordinary. I would like just to read to you part of a report of the Regional Spiritual Assembly received in 1956 from him as a secretary of the Regional Teaching Committee for West Africa. So we're talking about June 1956. And this is what he writes. Any spiritual venture calls for vision, policy, planning, detail. The beloved guardian ever provides the vision of the cause. The administrative bodies provide the policy at their various levels. Individuals and committees carry out the planning and detail work. Could you imagine? This is a gentleman who knows how to plan. This was his first participation in a Baha'i plan. And then he goes on to say, it is essential that each body concerned with the progress of the faith should combine all three in some measure. Without vision, policy would be narrow. Without policy, details would not be effective or even bear relationship to each other. This is someone, I haven't seen many Baha'i administrators at the time who could write something like this. Maybe there were one or two. Horace Holly was one of them. And we shall never forget Enoch Olinga. And if ever we do for a moment, we always have our Olinga to remind us of him. I hope that many friends will be able to read about Olinga and get inspired by him. May God bless his memory.
Nous avons eu la joie, le plaisir et l'honneur d'avoir chez nous M. Enoch Olinga pendant la période où il attendait l'autorisation d'aller voir notre bien-aimé gardien et aller à Haïfa. Pendant cette période, nous habitions un peu loin de mes parents, à Tunis même, et mon père venait nous voir tous les soirs, après être sorti de son travail. Et en étant ensemble, on avait aussi des amis qui venaient aussi voir M. Enoch Olinga. Et mon père avait continuellement aimé raconter des anecdotes. Et ces anecdotes, il les mimait en même temps. Et c'était Rowshan qui traduisait, il parlait en français ou en arabe, et Rowshan traduisait en anglais à M. Olinga. Et c'était ainsi, tous les soirs, mon père venait à la maison nous voir, et voir les amis, voir M. Olinga. Un soir, alors que on retournait du travail, Rowshan et moi, il n'y avait personne à la maison. Mais on entendait des rires. Et il n'y avait que mon père et M. Olinga. On s'était étonné, comment se fait-il qu'il y avait tous ces rires? Et quand on est rentré, on a trouvé carrément M. Olinga par terre. Il riait de tout son cœur. Mais il riait à tel point qu'on était au premier étage. Nous, de la porte d'en bas, on avait entendu ces rires. Mon père mimait seulement, parce que mon père ne connaissait pas l'anglais, et M. Olinga ne connaissait ni l'arabe ni le français. Et mon père mimait les histoires. Et M. Olinga se souvenait de ces histoires, et alors il riait. Ensuite, on entendait « Please, Mr. Bouchouch, please, stop !» Et ça, c'était une petite histoire qui arrivait à la maison continuellement. C'était un être extraordinaire. Quand on le regardait, on sentait combien son âme et combien de spiritualité il démontrait. Il était fantastique. Tous ceux qui le voyaient, tous ceux qui l'approchaient, l'aimaient profondément. Il avait une sorte d'amour qui sortait de son cœur. Alors, pour parler des mimiques que mon père faisait avec M. Olinga, par exemple, c'était une histoire, il y avait un type qui avait trop bu, il s'était saoulé. Et le soir, il avait l'habitude de faire sa douche et de se raser. Mais en se rasant, il s'est blessé la joue. Alors il est allé tout de suite chercher un pansement avec tout ce qu'il fallait pour essayer de mettre sur. Alors il est allé au miroir et il a pris alors le pansement, il a pris le sparadrap et il a tout bien collé. Mais au lieu de faire ça sur sa joue, comme il regardait le miroir, il a fait ça sur le miroir. Et donc, il a tout bien collé, tout ça sur le miroir. Alors, lorsqu'ils étaient tout seuls, mon père et M. Olinga, il se souvenait, il voulait lui raconter des histoires, alors il lui faisait simplement le geste du sparadrap qui se mettait sur le miroir. Et M. Olinga se levait alors et riait de bon cœur, avec tout son cœur, jusqu'à en tomber par terre. Mais on entendait, mais tout tremblait quand il riait. M. Olinga, tout tremblait, il riait de si bon cœur. C'était un rire que je ne crois pas qu'il existe chez quelqu'un d'autre. Il était unique dans son rire. Ça, c'est une des histoires. Il y avait aussi l'histoire de la personne qui était devenue, qui était malade, un malade mental. Il se prenait pour lui pour un grain de blé. Donc, il a été hospitalisé. Et le médecin le soignait et essayait de le persuader qu'il n'était pas un grain de blé, mais qu'il était une personne. Donc à un certain moment, il a vu qu'il allait très bien et qu'il était capable de sortir parce qu'il n'était plus devenu un grain de blé, il était une personne. Donc il lui a donné la permission de sortir. Mais en sortant, le médecin a décidé de le suivre. En sortant, il a marché et voilà qu'il voit un poulet qui traverse la route. Alors il voit un arbre, il monte vite sur l'arbre. Alors le médecin lui dit, mais enfin, qu'est-ce qui t'arrive? Tu n'es plus un grain de blé, tu es une personne, maintenant pourquoi tu montes? Il dit, oui, moi, je sais que je ne suis plus un grain de blé, mais lui, est-ce qu'il sait que je ne suis plus un grain de blé? Alors, lorsqu'il se rencontra avec mon père lui faisait comme ça seulement, qu'il voulait dire, c'est que le poulet savait, est-ce que le poulet sait que je ne suis plus un grain de blé? Alors, il lui faisait le geste comme ça. Et M. Olinga, alors là, c'était suffisant. Alors, un jour, M. Olinga nous disait, j'ai voulu prendre, il prenait toutes ces histoires-là et les écrivait. Et il a dit, je veux les raconter aux amis en Afrique. Mais après, dans un de ses voyages, on lui a dit, est-ce que... Alors, parce qu'il racontait toujours, il essayait de se souvenir. On lui a dit, je ne suis jamais arrivé. Parce que dès que je commençais à raconter l'histoire, il y a le rire qui me prenait et je ne pouvais jamais terminer les histoires. Et je tombais par terre en rigolant et les amis n'ont jamais su la fin de l'histoire.